Wait, Ian, check it out, dude. I did this for you. Just look at me for a second.
I think Dustin's been on the happy tablets today. He's normally not this.
Did you have a good night's sleep, Dustin?
He's rested.
I was trying to get Ian's attention. I was like, dang, what does it take to get this man's attention?
Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, and American retro design expert, Dustin Lee. This week we're joined by the most lovely man, I think, in the design industry, Mr. Dave Clayton. We're so excited to welcome Dave to the show. Dave works over at Astute Graphics, who produce some staggeringly good plugins for Adobe Illustrator. He's also a serial conference attender, runs his own creative podcast that he shoots, he draws, and seems to know just about everyone in the creative industry. Today, we picked Dave's brain on how to network in a non-sleazy, authentic way, how relationships are the backbone of the creative industry. So without further ado, let's get into the show. Dave, welcome. This is long overdue. I'm so happy you're with us.
I say it's really weird because obviously I've met all you guys, and every time I listen to the show in the car, I forget I'm listening to a pre-recorded show, and I'm sitting there joining in, going, "Yeah, I do that." So it's actually quite nice to be on it and be part of the conversation rather than be the frustrated listener.
I'm pumped to have you here, and yes, we want to pick your brain. Yes, you're going to bring value to the show, but really I'm most excited because now it's 3 English guys teaming up against Dustin. And I think that's something we can all get behind, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, in this age of brokenness, we need to all be coming together, okay?
There's David Brent with his melting pot.
Yeah, we're going to fuse that. See, English humour coming out already. But Dustin, if you do feel ostracised, it's fine. We got your back, man. You can be an honorary Brit for this episode.
Could you put on an accent for the whole episode, Dustin?
That also would work.
I'll do my best British accent. How's that?
I think that I'm listening to Donatella Versace there.
I can't do a British accent. How do you
Darling.
Just do it?
It just comes naturally to us.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's about as good as my American accent, so I wouldn't worry. Dave, as I say, long overdue. For all the people listening, we have all met you.
Yeah.
So, you're very much a friend of the show. And we were talking in the run-up to recording this, and I literally think, that thing 6 degrees of separation. I think with you, it seems to be about 1 degree of Dave Clayton separation, because you seem to literally know everyone. There's so many people where I'll start chatting to them and your name comes up and they're like, oh yeah, Dave, what a lovely guy. So not only do you seem to know everyone, but everyone seems to love you to an extent that I haven't seen before. So
it's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but it's like the 3 degrees of Dave Clayton.
I was just saying that to Kevin Bacon the other day.
Yeah, he told me actually you're a lovely bloke. Yeah. So yeah, and then he tried to push a phone contract on me. But a lot of people really listening, I think they might struggle. They might not know how to get the name out there, how to connect, how to make friends with some of their idols in the industry. I thought it'd be really fun to dig into that a bit with you if you're happy to share.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, today I was actually working and listening to the, I don't know when this goes out, but I was listening to the episode where you guys were talking about a similar kind of thing, but online, about making friendships and relationships and using those to promote your own business, which is great. And that's where that's kind of online life works, is where you can have internet friends. But the thing I found is when you step out of that and you make that effort to actually meet the people, it really changes the relationship, like massively. I've known people online, and Dustin, when I met Dustin for the first time at Creative South, I felt like I'd known him forever. It didn't feel like the first time I'd met him, because although we'd spoken online, when you meet someone and you've kind of developed that friendship, it doesn't feel forced. It feels like you should meet and you should get on. And I've been lucky. You're as nice as the people you surround yourself with. So I think the people in the community I've sort of been drawn to have all been naturally nice people. It's nice for you to say that, you know, people say I'm a nice guy, but equally, I think all the people I've met have been lovely as well. And that's part of making that whole relationship thing work.
When we talked, me and you had talked, we talk on Skype occasionally too. Yeah. And we had a really long talk about kids and all sorts of stuff. But can you share the story? Because I feel like this is kind of your origin. I think, correct me if you disagree, but I feel like a lot of your origin of who you are and why you are who you are is because of your father. Can you tell briefly the story about your dad? Because I felt like that made so much more sense about who you are. Yeah,
so my dad, bless him, we lost him this year, John. All I can remember when I was a kid was wherever we went, if we went on holiday, if we went out for the day, everybody seemed to know my dad. Or by the time we left anywhere, everybody seemed to know my dad. And it just became a standing joke that wherever we go, people were just drawn to my dad. Kids love my dad. And I think it just rubs off. It's not until you're older you realise, and in later life, you know, Dad would walk into a house and if someone had a screwdriver out or was doing something, he'd walk up and take it off and go, right, what are we doing? How can I help you? And those things, as you're growing up, you take for granted. You don't realise until you look back and start seeing that mirrored behaviour of, yeah, I am like my dad. You know, Dad could go anywhere and just people would know him and he would go and chat to people. You know, I used to be really shy. I used to go to events and parties and all sorts, and I'd be the guy in the kitchen standing on his own. I'd be in the corner of the room watching because I love people watching. It's only really sort of the last 10 to 12 years that I've come out of that shell and pushed myself a little bit further forward. And you know, I've seen the benefits from it. And up to when we lost Dad, he was really proud of what I'd done. And he used to always ask me about where I was going and who I'd met and tell him about the people that I'd met through that. And he was fascinated by it as well because, you know, internet wasn't a thing for him. That Dad, well, all our parents, they didn't have the internet. They had to go places. They had to travel and have real friends. So, so it's nice that, you know, you think those little things your parents give you, and that from Dad has been one of those things. Everyone in the family knew Johnny Clayton. It was just lovely to hear people talk about my dad that way. And I hope my girls, when they grow up, you know, they hear people say nice things about me.
I'm sure they will. Yeah, that's it. That's really lovely. As Dustin
They're going to hear it from me, Dave.
Oh, cool. I keep paying the direct debit as well, Dustin.
So Dave, I guess as someone who's made that journey from being a bit more shy, for any listeners out there who are a bit shy, who think, yeah, that sounds nice, getting out and connecting with more people, are there any tips that you could share about how you got there yourself? Yeah,
I mean, the first time I say quite, you know, I'm 53 now. A lot of this has happened to me in, I guess, from my, you know, when I turned 40, you know, up to then I've been a sociable person, you know, a lot of friends. But I think the thing I found is it's that thing, push yourself. You know, if you don't at least take that first step, it's never going to happen for you. I think nowadays it's easier, like we said with Dustin, with Skype, is if you are a bit of a kind of a wallflower and you are a bit nervous, or, you know, and some people get anxious and get anxiety attacks about going out and being at events with lots of people, that's something you've got to overcome yourself. But if you're just stepping into that, how do I go and form these relationships, I think the best thing to do is make the effort to go somewhere. You know, the amount of times I see people make excuses not to do something and then kind of moan a little bit that nothing's happening for them. So for now, for this generation, you know, set up a little Skype meeting. If there's someone who you really want to chat to, who's online and you've already got communication going, just ask if you can have a half-hour Skype one night if they're free, just to get that face-to-face, eye-to-eye thing going on, because it's so hard to misinterpret texts and emails. And, you know, I've always said, if you're in a bad mood, you can read an email in a bad mood and it can completely change a relationship. You know, so many people have that whole thing where, well, I'm not going to call him. It's his turn to call me. You know, you've got to forget all that. You've in the industry now, if you're a creative, and you want to get out there and forge relationships and get business, you have to make that effort now. And I still think the art of communication, the art of meeting people is still very much important, because, you know, I've wanted to make the effort to meet you, to meet Dustin, to meet Ian. Lisa's a bit further away, but I'm sure we'll meet one day. But it was really important to me to meet the people I get on with, because it just, you know, think of our relationship 4 years ago when we first started chatting. I was a customer. I sent you a message to say, I love what you're doing. You responded. You know, that's one big thing that a lot of people don't do. And we've kind of developed that little online relationship till in the end it was, you know, it seems silly we hadn't even met. So I think the first step, and one important thing as well is, although it can sound a little bit sneaky or sleazy, there's a lot to be said for researching the person who you're creating a friendship with. So, for example, for you, you know, I've you know, looked at your social media, and I looked at your LinkedIn, and I can sort of see what your interests are and the kind of things that make you the person you are. That's not sneaky.
No, that's very natural. I think if you go down the route of night vision goggles, then it is into bad territory.
and I know I was parked outside your house for a week, and thanks for bringing flasks of tea out.
Yeah, my girlfriend, that bloody bush is rustling again, unfortunately.
But yeah, I mean, researching someone isn't a bad thing. I think it's good to sort of know. Sometimes if you've just got that one thing in common, that can be the deal breaker.
I mean, I'm very happy to share the other side of that, because I get stuff all the time that is very salesy and pushy. I'm sure Dustin and Ian, you guys get this too. Like on my LinkedIn, it'll be like, hey, insert name, we should connect and do business together. Da, da, da. And it's like they're trying to sell you on the first thing. And you were pretty much the exact opposite of that, Dave. I like literally had no idea that we would ever do business together to any extent, because for me, you were just a really nice customer and community member, where you're being really positive and supportive, and I love this and I love that. And that's all it was for years, right? And, you know, now we're starting to look at doing a few bits with Astute and so on. But I mean, man, like if that was your original goal, which I don't think it was, you would have had some patience. I think you've obviously just gone in with the right intent and being super friendly and built an authentic relationship. And then serendipity means stuff can happen along the line. But I mean, literally none of that was like 4 or 5 years in the making that we've actually, you know, started working on some cool bits. And like, that's awesome compared to the people who go 5 seconds in and try and sell you on something.
Yeah. And go on.
I'll just share something that I observed about you. There was you've talked about the value, for instance, of meeting Tom, and you know, you always seem to play the long game with people, and again, like you said, not in like a fake way, in a real way. Yeah. In the sense that, like, you've talked about Tom before, and just like, you know, he's been my friend for this long. Like, we've talked for this long, and it's never, I'm trying to get something from him. I'm trying to take something from him. Hopefully this will happen. It's always just, he is my friend. Like, I do things for him. And, you know, a natural byproduct of that would be that, you know, eventually something happens the other way. Yeah. But like when we were talking, something came up the other day, and I said, I feel kind of uncomfortable about that. And you said, hey, you know, that's fine then. Let's not do that, because, you know, we're friends. And I feel like all of it comes across as just like when I was a kid, like when I was 14 with my friend Adam, you know, at my house when I lived in California, you know, like it's just like a friend. It's like, oh, well, no, we won't do that if you don't like doing that. Let's go play this or do that. And it comes across that way. You don't ever get the sense you're trying to extract something.
Yeah. And that's not even a forced thing. That's just a natural thing. Like I said, with yourself, with Tom, with pretty much anyone, some of my relationships start off as, I'm a customer. I admire what you do. I like who you are. And it's not even really, but it comes across like playing a long game, but it's not. I think it's just evolution of a friendship is, you know, we all have friends at school. And if you're lucky, you've still got a mate from school. Or you just forge friendships throughout your life. And I'd probably say, apart from the guy that introduced me to my wife and another good friend, I have no friends from school. All my friendships have kind of come in phases. So sort of my friends for the last 10, 15 years are way different to the friends 10 years before. But all these relationships just come about, like you say, Tom, serendipity. It's sometimes they work, sometimes, you know, they kind of just fade off. And like in real life, if you go to when you start a new school or whatever, you're naturally drawn to certain people. And because we're creatives and we have that thing in common, I just pride myself on the fact that I'm very patient. I think it's just one of the ways I've been. But I admire hard workers as well. It goes back to that thing of, if you're just going to email someone and go, "Hey, I think you're brilliant," now that means I can have a free thing. That's how a lot of relationships seem to work online these days. It's very forced, fake friendships, very quick. It needs to be kind of in and out,
isn't it? What's the immediate return I'm going to get on this interaction?
You know, look at 5 years ago, I was a customer. 10 years ago, I was a member of the NAPP, National Association of Photoshop Professionals. Went to my first ever event, which was in Las Vegas, which I saved up for. Cost me a good couple of grand to go out. I was just a member. I got to meet Scott Kelby. I met a few people at that event. I'm still friends with all those people that I met at that event to this very day, and we still keep in touch. Sometimes it's just for a chat. You know, it's not even like an end goal to it. It's just people in the industry. You know, it's tough enough as it is. You know, I listen to the show and the things you talk about. How, you know, you're trying to build a business online. You're trying to help each other and share. And as time goes on, this kind of market gets bigger. You know, there's more competition. There's more choices. People have got more choices. And I think one important thing is you just have to find your path and not try and scatter yourself and be everywhere.
Yeah.
Because that's where you suffer.
I'm glad you touched on your first event, because I'd love if you could share your thoughts on like the power of conferences, because I still have yet to attend one. So apart from the advice of Tom, you're an idiot for not going to any yet, which I'll totally accept. Could you share a bit about how powerful you think they can be, how they've worked out positively for you?
Yeah, I mean, the first one was when I first joined the NAPP. I used to buy this magazine called Photoshop User Magazine, and I saw inside they had this membership and they had this event every year. And a lot of people on this side of the pond who still say it's to travel over to America to go to an event already has a cost. You've got a plane ticket. So I'm quite envious of the amount of cool events that go on in the US that I wish I could go to. Last week was Designer Con in Anaheim, and that looked really cool. But you can only budget for so much because it comes with an expense. So I always look at it as, okay, back to ROI is, okay, if I'm going to pay, say, £1,000 for a plane ticket, and then I've maybe got a conference pass on top of that. So, and a hotel room. So before you've even, like, talking about an Englishman going to America or an American coming to England, you're a couple of grand in before you've even set foot in the place. So not everyone's got a couple of grand to do this. Now, I'm lucky recently I can travel through work, but I've been to a few events that I've had to pay for. So I have to look at it as, okay, what's the value of that event to me? That if I'm going to go, what am I going to come away with? Am I going to meet vendors?
Well, you don't always
Am I
know
going to meet
either,
presenters? Right? No, I mean, you can go to an event and meet nobody. It's really as good as you put yourself in. So that first event for the NAPP was in Las Vegas. There was about, 4,000 people there. I felt like a tiny fish in a massive pond. But by the end of the 3 days, every penny I spent on that event was so worthwhile. When I look to where I am now, the payoff for that in 2010 to where we are in 2018, and when I look at what the opportunities I've had that have come from that, I'm writing a book that came from that event. I've taught at conferences, I've taught video training online because of relationships that started at that event. So I think if you're planning on going to an event, like I went to Creative South for the first time, and that's where I met Dustin and Tom. You so have to go. That if I was going to recommend one event, Creative South. I reserved my rooms today, by the way.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
I need to book some tickets.
That as an event if you're listening to this show, and there's thousands of you doing so, if you're going to go to an event, I thoroughly recommend Creative South. If you want to go to your first creative event and come away feeling like every single dime you spent was totally worth it, you'll feel like that when you come away from Creative South, because I think it's like less than 1,000 people there. The instructors are really cool. There's no egos. There's no like big stars. Everyone's on a level playing field. Everybody makes you feel welcome. Complete strangers will ask you to lunch and dinner. You'll be chatting to people in line. If you want to dip your toes in the water, that's the event I would definitely recommend trying out. But you have to go to connect. If you go and sit back and don't join in, you're really going to miss out, because, so many people I met at Creative South that I kind of knew of. Some I'd followed online, some I'd heard other people talk of. I came away from that event, I met every single person I wanted to meet and have kept in touch with them since, which is another really important thing.
How do you do that? Do you Instagram? Like, do you see that they're there on their social media and message them, let's meet up? Or?
Yeah, I mean, we had a bit of an association with Mike Jones, who runs Creative South, through Astute Graphics. So I kind of knew about the event through that. But when you looked at the people who were attending, like Dustin spoke and Amy and Jen Hood were there, Lenny Terenzi, these are people I'd seen online on Instagram or Twitter, where other designers had mentioned them, or, you should follow this guy. And you start to, and I like retro style, so I'm naturally drawn to anything that's kind of, that's my style of stuff. That's why I came across Dustin. That's why I like Lenny's things. It's once I saw they were there, it's just really go up and talk to him. Generally there's an expo floor, or people to have a merch table or whatever, go up and buy something. And that's the important thing as well, is be a customer. I'm a customer of yours. I'm a customer of Dustin's. I'm a customer of Ian's. I've purchased all from you, from all of you. I've spent way too much with you, Tom.
Thanks again, mate.
But something like that is, if you're a customer, you're buying into what they do. You're buying into what they spend their time on. So, I buy your resources, I buy Dustin's resources, and I've bought stuff from Ian's shop. That gives me value then. So the relationship is, you've made something, I appreciate it, and I purchase it. Then I communicate with you and say, I like it. And then I follow you. And then I see we've got mutual friends. So that kind of opens the relationship up a little bit more. And then you start to find little connections, and, then you might want to meet someone and you might have to go to an event, or that for me has been quite an important thing, is not just being hey, I want to be your friend, friends, because that's really forced and scary.
Yeah.
Okay. Can I ask a question? Because obviously a beneficial part of like Creative South, which I didn't find when I went to my first UK conference, was there's a lot of time to party and, build relationships up through just hanging around, having amazing food and, music and fireworks and stuff like that. In a practical sense, because for me, I do find it hard to, even though I go to these events and stuff like that, I find it really hard to just go randomly up to people and talk to people. How would you do, because you've spoken about, going to their stall and buying something. What would you do, like, say, in the evening when there's a party? How do you then go up and approach people and speak to people, and what would you say? Because I know people really like having steps.
Yes. Well, I was going to say, if you're a listener to the show, Dave, you'll know Ian likes specific breakdowns, which I find really helpful when I hear them as well, to be honest.
Yeah, my first rule is don't be Michael Scott or David Brent. Don't just walk up and stand in front of someone and just start laughing randomly at anything they say. The best thing, like anything, is to be referred. That's been the secret for me, is like, I get to know you and we go to an event and Ian, you've met Ian, I know Ian, so you introduce me to Ian. And then we get chatting, and if we hit off, Ian introduces me to Dustin. And then we get into a conversation and Dustin goes, oh, you should meet Lenny. So I find at events is get with someone you already know that maybe already knows a couple of people you want to meet, and use them to kind of just refer you, because somebody saying, oh, this is my friend, you should meet them, carries so much more weight than just walking up to someone and going, hi, I want to be your friend, I want free stuff.
Yeah.
Which is, I've seen so many people do it so badly.
Well, and even if it's like, not I want free stuff, even if it's going up and going, I think you're brilliant, it's very closed. Like, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
It's like, thanks.
So what I'm taking from what you're saying is actually start building those relationships now, so that you're not just turning up and you know no one. Yeah, that's like the worst case scenario. So I suppose you contact with like someone that you admire, and if you're not getting a response, let's say, I know you say that everyone's on a level playing field, but you may have like Aaron Draplin, which I think is on slightly a different level, and he may not answer back to some of your stuff, but there may be a speaker that you like there, and you speak to them on Twitter or something like that. And I suppose if you do it now, because that's not till April time, so it gives you quite a few months to build up some genuine relationships. Because if you're thinking, you're not wanting stuff, you're just wanting to know that you've got someone you can speak to when you get there, which is really, because like when you go, like for me, this was like only my second time to America. Landing a place I didn't really know. Had to get when Mike goes, it's just down the road from Atlanta. Yeah. It's 2 hours driving at 80 miles an hour. Yeah. Which is like, in the UK, you could, that's like going from here to Scotland. So, it's, in terms of just down the road, that wasn't down the road for me.
No. So anything over 2 hours, you're going on holiday.
Yeah. And so I think it's, and taking that away helps, especially for like people like me, knowing someone like, because I knew because I was going to I was doing a workshop there, so I got to go to the bit where the speakers and stuff go in the night before it starts. And so it was really nice not just turning up and I'm like standing there, not knowing any of the people. I knew Dustin sort of, through just messaging, and there was Bob Ewing as well, because I was going to be doing the workshop with him, so that was really good. So there was a handful of people, and then they, like you say, they could introduce me to other people that were already there, and sort of connect those dots.
There's something to add in that Diane had mentioned, who we recently had on, who is very much in the same vein as you in terms of just super friendly and giving. And I can picture you doing this too, Dave. She specifically, for instance, at Creative South, volunteers to be one of the people to give out the name tag, the lanyards with your name on them and stuff like that. She doesn't get paid to do that, but she does it because it gives her face time with every single person that comes in, and that creates an association. I was trusted enough to hand out lanyards, so I'm not crazy, and I get to have maybe 20 seconds with the person to say hi, and and she just is so giving and not below doing something like that. And I mean, the same thing, being like, I'd be happy to give out.
And what was great was that's how I met Diane. I went to the because we just started He Shoots, He Draws in February, and then I was at the event in April, so I signed up to go to the Master of One podcast workshop, just because they were talking about podcasting. It would just be good to check that what we're doing was right. And Diane was handing out, checking the tickets, and so she got someone's name wrong, and me being me, I just thought I'd play along with it and made a bit of a joke of it, and didn't know who she was. Never heard of her. I had no idea who Diane was, but she stood out, but not in a bad way. You could see she was a focus point, and she just smiled, and everyone smiled around her. And then I went and did the workshop, met the Master of One guys who were lovely, and then came back down. And then the next night I bumped into Diane again, and we joked about the person's name being wrong again. And then somebody said, have you Diane then? And I kind of went, well, we met yesterday. And then they said, Diane does this. And instantly it was, okay. Diane's kind of what I do.
We did actually, we had her on the show. We referred to her as the female Dave Clayton.
Well, I see myself, I consider her to be ahead of me in that, because she gives so much more. We all give in our own way,
mate, honestly.
Yeah, but Diane is just, I watch her podcast as well, and just the way that she runs a business that goes that extra part as well.
Yeah,
I can totally see how she does that and how valuable that is. But yeah, I mean, what Diane does is, it's quite inspirational as well, because she does it. You can see she does it for the right reasons.
Dave, I'm curious. I feel like I feel an obligation to say that more and more these days.
There's a catchphrase. You got to use it.
I don't have that. I am not the type of person where if I walk in the door and see someone with a hammer, I take the hammer from them and say, "How can I help?" I wasn't raised that way. I wish I was more like that. I'm just not that person. So for someone that isn't like that, when I find myself caught in me, or how can I get something that benefits me? Like, what would you say is a good internal thing to maybe say to yourself, or for someone to say to themselves if they're feeling like, gosh, I'm already struggling. I don't have much to give. I feel like I really need to try to get ahead. What would you tell them about your philosophy to help them to have a different conversation in their mind?
What you mean for them going into talking to someone or trying to be like this?
I think I mean just like every time we interact, and we've both done things to help each other out, but you never really ask for things. You tend to just give, and as a result, you get back. So I guess, how would you explain that to people?
I think that's just a personal thing for me. Is again, goes back to your upbringing. It's really funny how many things you realise you learnt from your parents. My mum's from the East End of London, and she was brought up during the war. It's World War II. She was born the year World War II started. So the first kind of 5 years of her life was World War II in East London. So her side of the family have always been quite thrifty and, make do and mend, that kind of thing. So mum and dad have always made us value time and expense. We appreciate people's time. We appreciate, we all have to make a living, and that things cost money. And Nick, my boss, always jokes, because whenever I travel, I'll sleep on floors rather than spend money on a hotel. It's just, I don't like wasting money, but when I spend my money, I like it to count. So if I need a service, if I need something, I can't walk into Sainsbury's and expect free stuff. You should never go into it expecting free things. But I know I can offer something, and it might not always be money. It might be help or an introduction or just friendship. And for me, it makes a huge difference. Is if I buy something from you, it has value to me. And I know you've got, I've got to know you. I know you've got kids. And I always joke to you when I say, if I buy no, let me buy it, because that's shoes for your kids for school. And same as Ian. You've got kids as well. And I bought a couple of bought the World War II or the World War torn edges and font effects pack for something I did for Glyn. Why would I expect it for free? Ultimately, as you develop friendships and you help each other, somebody might offer you something, and if you need it, take it. But quite often that can turn into a bit of a greed, where it becomes, well, if I got that thing free, I should get everything free now. And that's just, I think it's just an age thing. I think you have to value what people do and what they provide for you and how you use it in your life. So as creatives, all three of you provide resources that make me a better designer. And if I didn't know you, I'd be spending money with you. The fact that I do know you doesn't mean I shouldn't spend money with you. Now, if Dustin, we met up and you gave me a t-shirt and a couple of stickers, I gave the t-shirt to a friend who it fit, because unfortunately I'm a medium and you gave me a small. No, but it's like, if I do get given things, I pass it.
I wish you'd worn the small t-shirt to appear on the show. That would have been fantastic. Cropped up.
I was tempted. If people do give me things, I pass them on. So if it's good for me and I can use it, of course I'll keep it. If Tom rocked up and said, "There, Dave, here's a MacBook Pro," of course I'm going to take it. But when you give me stuff, and other people have given me things. Last week when I was at Max, I got those Draplin postcard packs from French Paper Co. And I knew there'd be a load of people from the UK who can't go to Max, who couldn't afford to go to Max, who, you know, seems like a million miles away from them, that are big Aaron Draplin fans. So I went over to French Paper Co and said, can I take some of these back home? I brought them home. I emailed a couple of people and said, look, I know you're Draplin fans and you couldn't go, but I got you one of these packs and I got you some stickers and a bit of swag. Done about 6 or 7 jiffy bags and sent them out. And just as a, you know, I was lucky enough to be there, and I like that I can give stuff away. I like that I can pass something on and pay it forward. And ultimately it pays back, but it doesn't have to pay back in goods. Just the relationships themselves and the introductions that you get, that's payment enough sometimes. It shouldn't just always, there shouldn't be an end result for it.
Yep, 100%. And I know we've talked about this on the show in terms of putting yourself out there, not just physically in person in conferences and so on, but in terms of the content that you put out there. And you've been doing incredibly well with your podcast, which you do with Glyn Jewess, very talented photographer. And it's got the coolest name in the world because it's design and photography, and you called it He Shoots, He Draws, which is freaking amazing.
That was one of mine.
I love that. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, like that's the one. Could you talk a little bit about how doing that show has helped both of you? Has it helped you make new connections? Has it got your names out there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we started it, I'd already been doing a podcast with a guy called Tony Harmer, who used to work for Adobe, called the Vectorgenarians, which was another name I came up with, which was, we both work in Vector, we're both over 50, so we're octogenarians. So we called it the Vectorgenarians, and it was just us two talking. And we just had fun chatting, and it was just one of those, a bit like, you know, I joke with Dustin, every time we talk, it's 3 hours later, we're like, we better stop. We just wanted to talk about design and stuff. And then I just said to Glyn, you know, I've been doing this thing with Tony. It's actually really good. We're getting some nice feedback and people are interested and they've said some nice things. I think now is the time where we can take your experience and my experience of the photographer and the designer, put our combined kind of information together, and let's just see how it goes. And if we can get past that 8-episode block that a lot of podcasts suffer with, and push through it, we know enough people, we've made enough friends and relationships in the industry. Let's just ask, you know, and it's one of those big things again, is just ask. Mm-hmm. It's the worst that can happen. Someone would just say no. And we've had a few knockbacks. We've had people say no. We've had people say yes and then say no. You can't take it personally. If you start to take the rejections personally, it really will wind you up. So the podcast has been a nice sort of exhaust for us, because we take the relationships we've got and we say, we'd like to chat to you, but we don't want to ask you, like, what's your favourite logo? How did you get started? What's your favourite Pantone colour? What's your, you know, if I've heard one Aaron Draplin interview, I've heard 30 and 29 of them have been the same interview.
Yeah.
And that's nothing against Aaron. You know, I like the guy. I love his work ethic. I love his background. I listen to a lot of podcasts of him because I wanted to get to know him. And one of the things I wanted to do in our podcast was give people a chance to talk about themselves and their background. And we will talk about something relative in the industry. And more often than not, we've introduced guests to other guests. You know, I introduced Aaron, recommended Aaron. In fact, we ended up with 2 Aarons
by mistake, but it worked out fantastic.
By mistake, but it worked out all right. So
yeah, for everyone listening, so we've obviously had Aaron Draplin and Aaron Blaise, the incredibly talented Disney animator, on the show, and Dave was mates with both of them, and he basically said, oh, would you like me to put in a word and try and get them on your podcast? And I went, of course, that'd be fantastic. And then he looped in Aaron Blaise, and I didn't know Aaron Blaise at the time, and I was like, is this like Aaron Draplin? Has he got like a pseudonym or something? I was like, and Dave was like, oh no, I've introed the wrong Aaron, but he ended up being such a lovely guy and such an inspiration.
Yeah,
we had him on the show as well. that's a perfect example, right? You know, that was a super popular episode, and that came from you doing a nice gesture by making that connection. Are you able to talk about? I don't know how many people know how you got to know Aaron Draplin.
Well, I mean, both of them. I'll quickly tell you. So Aaron Blaze I was at Photoshop World. He was an instructor. Didn't know him. I knew he was an ex-Disney guy only because a friend of ours mentioned him. And we were sat by the pool outside, and his girlfriend at the time heard me and Glyn talking in our lovely English accents and got chatting to us because she had a friend in Manchester. It turned out she was Aaron's girlfriend, and he started chatting, and we just clicked, just developed a friendship there and then. And every time we go out to America, we stay with him, and he's become a really good friend. We refer to him as, you know, one of our brothers from another mother. And he's a great guy, and I'm in total awe of his ability. And he's the nicest giving man. And
he was such a gentle soul. I had a lot of time for him.
Yeah, and an amazing story. But Aaron Draplin's one was, so I came across a blog post in 2015 on, I think it's called MetaJive or something. I'd never ever heard of Aaron Draplin at all. My first introduction to him was I saw this blog post about logo design. So I thought, oh, it's quite cool. Read it. And then as I was reading it, I thought, oh, I like this guy's background. I love the stuff that he's doing. He's got that kind of Saul Bass thing going on. So I read about him. Then I went and listened to a podcast, which I think ended up introducing me to a podcast. And I've since befriended the person on the podcast through it by listening to that. So I emailed Aaron, and I saw that he'd been into England once a couple of years before. So I just thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I'll email him and say, have you thought about coming to the UK again? Because if I want to see him speak, and the only way I can do it is go to America, which is expensive. And he responded, and he said, I haven't been for a couple of years. I'd love to come. Got any ideas? So I went back and said, yeah, I'll do a Kickstarter. And he was like, yeah, we'll do cool merch, and you get it sorted out. This is how much I cost, and this is the flight, and this is the hotel. So I approached Adobe through my relationship with them that I had a couple of years, and just said, would you sponsor this? Kind of offset some of the cost. And then we went through this whole thing of, yeah, you'll never get Aaron Draplin to come. And I went, no, he will. And they were like, no, he won't. We've tried. I said, no, he genuinely will. I've got the email. Here, look, he said he will. So they went, okay, if you can get a connection email where he will say he will come, we will pay for it, all of it. So I naturally went back and said, look, if you come over, Adobe sponsor this, are you cool with that? And long story short, it happened. So I decided to go to Adobe Max for my first Adobe Max, and because Aaron was going to be there, and flew out there, did the event. Was lucky enough to be a teaching assistant as well, and met Aaron for the first time. And I saw him walk in to reception to sign in and get his pass, and looked over, and I just thought, there's a swarm of people come round him. So I just thought, I'll leave him. I'll try and catch him later. And as he walked towards me, he just stopped in his tracks. He pointed at me and just went, Dave. And I was kind of, is there a Dave behind me that he knows? And he just recognised my face. And he came straight over to me and said, it's so good to meet you. And look, it's going to be busy, but we'll definitely catch up. By that time, the event in London was already booked and it was happening. So I saw him one other time at Max, and then came home. And then while I was at Max, I met Nick from Astute Graphics, and we had breakfast together. And the introduction was through a mutual friend. And we got chatting, and I told Nick this story about Aaron Draplin. And he hadn't heard any of that. He'd only heard Adobe had booked him and Adobe had done all the work. So I showed him the emails, and he was kind of, you're pretty good at this networking stuff, aren't you? Didn't think anything of it. Got home. The event goes on. I met Aaron at Heathrow. I drove him. We got a taxi to Shoreditch. I made sure he got into the hotel and everything, looked after him. Did the event. Nick brought all the staff down from Astute to the event as well, and we went for dinner with Aaron. And unbeknown to me, that was Nick plotting to take me from the job I was in and employ me. So all of that beginning thing with Aaron, that kind of friendly relationship and communication has developed into a friendship.
And a career.
And a career, yeah. You know, I've been there for a year and 9 months now, and been to a couple of Adobe Maxes and Creative South and Creative Pro. And, you know, I'm lucky now I get to go to these events as my job, but I still go into it like a kid in a sweet shop.
It's a pretty cool job, honestly, when I think about it. For a designer, it's like you get paid to go to all these awesome conferences. It's a bit of a dream, but
yeah,
I think you are a very good example of how it should be done with that kind of thing. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then, 3 years. So I remember I put on my Instagram when we went for fish and chips with Ian and yourself and Aaron and his lovely girlfriend. And everyone was commenting and being like, how the hell? Like, this is awesome kind of thing. And it's all just the power of connection. And that stuff is so much more real. That's much better than, you know, us going and like fanboying at a conference, right?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I still fanboy over people. I'm still inside. I'm excited when I meet. Like I met Bob Ewing, who does the inch by inch stuff, and you know there were a few designers. I mean, even Dustin. I was still a little bit. Oh, it's Dustin. Not so much it. No, but even
we get that
every
every
really
week. Cool. To be honest, he's an intimidating guy.
Even meeting Ian when we met in London that day, you know, I was really looking forward to meeting Ian, because you're.
It sounds like I was letting you down though. I'm really looking forward to it. It's like,
I was
didn't really match up to the height.
taller than I expected, and Dustin the same as well. Because I never expect people to be giants as well. Because
Ian's actually 5'2".
Yeah, Dustin, you're like massive, aren't you?
I'm 6'1". But I mean, you're much taller than I thought. We haven't met, but I know from talking to you that you're taller. But yeah, I mean, because you know you're from the land of hobbits, I always tend to picture you guys as being very short, and that doesn't tend to be the case.
I don't know what it says about our personalities that we're just instantly assuming that everyone around us is like half our height. My little minions running around.
But no, there is still that little thing of. I think you have to have that element of excitement. You know, it's still a thrill meeting you. It was a thrill meeting Dustin. It's nice for me to say to people. There was a designer the other day on Instagram who's based in the UK, and I saw that they do a lot with Dustin. They buy a lot of Dustin stuff, and we sort of keep in touch because me and this design agency have got a love of books, and we both keep sharing all our books online. And I get quite a thrill being able to go, I'm friends with Dustin. You know, I know Tom or I know Ian. It's still a nice thing to be able to say when you develop these friendships that, you know, like Dustin joked at the beginning about my brother's friends with someone in the Rolling Stones. He's not my friend, but it's still a little bit of a thrill when you can sort of say that. So some of the people I meet, and even Aaron, you know, I was in Portland for Adobe Max. I didn't want to advertise it too much because obviously I didn't want him being bombarded with people going, oh, can I do that? But Aaron very kindly let me stay at his house for a couple of days, and we got to sit in his studio, we got to chat, we went to breakfast. I was still sitting there thinking, oh my God, I'm in Aaron Traplin's studio. You know, I'm sitting, and the thing I have with Aaron is there's not a single photograph of me and him for the whole trip. Because I said,
I've got to tell a story about, so when you were in Portland, so, you know, Dave, months before was like, I'm going to be in Portland, you know, I'm busy a lot of the days, but, you know, let's make sure we have time to spend, you know, grab lunch, have an afternoon, hang out. So we hung out one afternoon after you had been hanging out with Aaron.
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah. And so we had some delicious sandwiches. That does not contribute to the story at all. Oh yeah, you're wearing a Powell's book. So yeah, we were at Powell's book. So me and Dave both are book nerds. So we were just geeking out at Powell's, which is like the biggest bookstore in the US, I think. And we were in the design section, and we were just kind of having a conversation about design books. And a lady who works there said, well, you know, if you like that, I think you'd really like Aaron Draplin. You should really check out his book. And I'm kind of looking at Dave like, this lady has no idea that literally Dave has just been hanging out with Aaron Draplin, eating hot dogs or something, or eggs and sausage this morning.
Yeah, it was funny because Dustin went, oh, he's staying at his house. it was. I didn't want to say it because I just felt like,
you don't want to be that
right
guy?
to say it. But no, but it was really nice that Dustin said it, and I kind of went, yeah, I am. But that's taken 3 years for that relationship with Aaron, and it goes back to the whole thing with these relationships is kind of look at what they are to you, because I've been lucky enough that I developed a friendship with Aaron, and a lot of that's come out of my respect for him and him knowing that I respect his time and space. So that's why, of course I'm gutted. I've not got a single photograph of me and him at his place in his studio when I've seen him post other pictures, but I just wanted him to feel like he had a mate round.
Yeah, you don't
like
do
if
that
you
with
had your
friends
mates
so much,
round.
do you?
You don't keep pulling the camera out because so many people do it to him, and it's a sacrifice. But what would I rather have? A photograph with him at an event, or the experience of, we can text each other and I can stay at his house and we can hang out. So not all of those relationships will come to that. All I would say to people out there is don't expect too much from something so quickly.
Yeah, bit of patience.
It's like Dustin said, it's not even playing the long game. It's just be friends with people because it's a nice thing to do. And the way you behave as well is another thing that I've said to people is when you're on social media, Glyn and I had a chat the other day. We were going to interview someone and we've chosen not to because there's a certain behavior pattern on social media that makes us uncomfortable about this person. And what we don't want to do is associate ourselves with that. So the way you behave on social media is really important, because if you start being a dick and like winding people up and being quite abusive and using bad language, or posting inappropriate memes and stuff like that, you will soon find those relationships will suddenly, that phone doesn't get answered, those emails don't get answered, you start getting unfollowed.
Yeah.
So how you behave on social media is really important. Share things because it's a nice thing to do. Whenever you guys have something going on, I time how I do it. So I don't just do like 7 things in one go, but like I'll share your bundle. I quite often will share like Ian's grid builder. I did that a couple of times because
that's so
it's a really good product.
Like just the retweet and the time to say, check this out and craft a post about something that isn't your project, and it's not something you're working on, it's someone else's, is huge. And that's such a thing that anyone can do, right?
Yeah, and when you retweet something, like when we do the podcast, well, I've said I listen to a lot of podcasts because all of them have helped me in my job. Adventures in Design, Mark Brickey is a big one. I've met a lot of designers. We've got a lot of work for Astute through that. Master of One's really good. Diane's podcast. Listen to a lot of podcasts, and I share them, and I'll retweet and say you should like Mark Heron's Blue Deer Design. I met Mark. He's like just down the road from us, and I meet him in Georgia. And we sat and we had a beer together. It was quite funny because he's underage. So every time the security walked in, he gave me his beer, and I had to look like I had 2 beers, and I'm sitting with a young boy. It's very odd. But look at what Mark's doing. If you are a young designer, look at what Mark's doing with Creative Waffle. He's working really hard. He's just got Stefan Sagmeister for his podcast. He had Paula Scher. He's had Aaron Draplin twice. Mark is a nice lad. He's young. He's carving a career for himself.
Oh, he's lovely. Like
he's going about it the right way at the moment.
He's going to be ridiculous with what he's doing.
Exactly. And look at you. You're 30 and you own your own business. I mean, how? That's
I'm
cool
rotting
thing
on the inside, Dave. That's the.
I know.
I wanted to mention a pattern that I've noticed in you, Dave, and in you, Tom, and people that I tend to notice that I'm attracted to work with, and it's that you talk naturally in a way in which you talk about how it benefits the other person, and it doesn't come across as I'm trying to do this as some technique. it comes across as that's just how I think about it. So like when me and Tom started working together, Tom would be like, I think this is going to get you and me a lot of exposure. I think you're going to make a lot of money. I think that you are really going to make like a lot of people happy with this. I think this is going to be like, it was all about me. And like, I love talking about me. I love stuff about me. I'm a huge fan of it. You know what I mean? So when we work together on things, you're like, Dustin, like, I think like this will be great for you. And when you do that, obviously my ears perk up. And I think a lot of people's ears perk up when someone tells them what's in it for the other person. And then as a result of that, you kind of start to think, I really like this person. Like, I want them to like me back too. How can I help them? And their generosity makes you want to, for me at least, want to be better at that. And so I'm like, well, how can I do that for them and be that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And share advice. If I chat to someone, if I'm talking to someone in the industry, whether they're, like an equal or a CEO of a company, and they give me some advice or give me some information, I'll share that. I don't like to be one of those people that keeps everything to themselves. And funnily enough, I said to Glyn the other day that the world of Tom, you used to do tutorials.
Yeah.
If you think back 5-10 years ago, the way that industry is nobody wanted to give their secrets away.
Yeah.
It was all
nuts.
Nowadays, people are competing and who can give away the most.
Mm-hmm. It's a good thing though. It's a good show.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, the YouTube thing's quite interesting because it's kind of an unqualified area. But now everybody wants to help and give advice. If someone gives me a nugget of advice or something or an introduction, I'll pass that on. I will give other podcast guests ahead of ours because I know they're right for their podcast than what I'm doing, because we've got enough good guests coming along that just don't be afraid to share it. Don't be afraid to give stuff away, because people really do appreciate it when you just do a genuinely nice thing.
Yeah, I love that.
And pass on stuff like that.
I think that's you all over. Dave, thank you so much for jumping on today and sharing all of this. I think a lot of it might almost sound common sense to people, but it's not, because people aren't doing it. And so I know for me, like whenever I hang out with you or interact with you, it kind of puts it back front of mind. Like, yeah, that's the right way to be doing things. And it's nice to reaffirm that when you see those qualities in other people. So thank you for that. For all the dear listeners at home, where can they find you online? I'm sure a lot of people want to find out more and connect with you.
Yep, I'll give a plug for Astute Graphics. So if you want to see where I work, that's astutegraphics.com. So if you're an Adobe Illustrator user, go and have a look at what we're doing. If you want to listen to the podcast, it's heshootshedraws.com.
Love that stuff.
And we're on social media as He Shoots He Draws. And personally, and this is just one thing I will say, that I'm so bad. I'm like the plumber that's his own plumbing's awful, but he fixes everyone else's. I'm on social media as It's Dave Clayton. So it's at It's Dave Clayton. And I do have a website, but it's tumbleweed, because I just spend all my time kind of doing all this stuff and don't really. I mean, I don't put any of my work online. I don't promote myself. I like the way my world works at the moment. Yeah. So they're the main places if you want to give the podcast a listen.
Yeah,
and
highly recommend.
Please pop in.
It's proving really popular, the podcast. So
yeah,
you guys.
We've got I don't know when this episode will go out, but our 50th episode will be released on December the 6th. And we're about to hit, I know, we're going to hit a massive milestone that we're going to announce on that week. I'll just say it's 6 figures.
Wow.
In terms of
incredible
downloads.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're really, really chuffed about that.
Good.
So
good for you, man.
We've learned a lot. Over the 50 episodes. And
that's incredible.
And your podcast has really helped.
Well, you've probably seen now appearing on it. We have no clue what we're doing. We just cobble it together. But
that's nice. That's the good thing about it, is you sit and chat about stuff as it comes off the top of your head. It's not scripted like some others. But
it's not. No,
if you listen to this, tell a friend. Tell a friend to subscribe to Honest Designers.
Do it.
Pass it on.
See, there he is, giving again. He can't help himself. Dave, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate having you on.
No, thank you.
I know we're all going to, hang out more in the future at conferences, definitely at my first conference.
Yeah.
But everyone go check out Dave and his amazing work online. And once again, thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. See you, chaps.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com or find us over on iTunes and now Spotify by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too, if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.